1024 AD Sichuan Province, China. The Song Dynasty government prints the first official paper money in world history. They call it gaozi, 1 note equals 1,000 copper coins. Instead of hauling metal, merchants can carry paper. Trade explodes. Commerce flourishes. This is genius. The Chinese have invented the future of money 700 years before Europe catches on. Fast forward to 1356, Yuan Dynasty China. Paper money is worthless. Merchants refuse it. Farmers will not accept it. People use it as toilet paper. They burn it for heat. The economy collapses into barter. Wheelbarrows of cash cannot buy a bag of rice. From revolutionary innovation to complete destruction in 332 years. How did the civilization that invented paper money become the first to completely destroy it through inflation? And why are we watching the exact same pattern unfold right now with every major currency on Earth? This is the story of humanity's first experiment with fiat money. By the end, you will understand the 7 steps that destroy every unbacked currency. See how China discovered them all 700 years ago, and recognize the warning signs flashing in 2025. This is not just history, this is a warning. It is 1000 AD Sichuan Province in southwestern China. Walk through the market town of Chengdu, and you feel the bustle. This is one of the richest regions in the Song Dynasty. Tea merchants, silk traders, salt producers, iron workers. Commerce is booming, but there is a problem. A massive, heavy, expensive problem. Copper coins. To buy anything significant, you need thousands of them. A single string of 1,000 copper coins weighs about 6.5 pounds. To purchase a horse, you need 20 strings. That is 130 pounds of metal. To buy a house, you would need a wagon train of copper. Actually moving money from one city to another requires armed escorts, pack animals, and time. Lots of time. In this world, wealthy merchants have a clever solution. They deposit their copper coins with trusted merchant houses. In exchange, they get a certificate, a piece of paper that says you own 1,000 coins held in our vault. You can redeem it any time. These certificates are called gaozi, flying money, because they are as light as birds compared to copper. At first, this is pure genius. The merchant houses hold the copper. The certificates circulate as receipts. Everyone benefits. Merchants can travel light, trade accelerates, Sichuan's economy booms. This private system works perfectly because it is backed by real copper. For every certificate in circulation, there are real coins in the vault. Trust is earned, not declared. But then something happens that will change world history. In 1023, several merchant houses fail. They issued more certificates than they had copper. When depositors showed up to redeem, the vaults were empty. Classic bank run. People panic, trust collapses. The certificates become worthless overnight. Meet Emperor Renzong. He watches this crisis and sees opportunity. In 1024, he does something unprecedented. The government takes over the gaozi system. They nationalize paper money. The Bureau of Exchange is created to print official government notes. These are backed not by copper in private vaults, but by the authority of the emperor. The government promises to redeem them. The first official fiat currency in human history is born. And at first, it works. The government prints conservatively. They maintain copper reserves. They issue gaozi every 3 years. Each batch circulates for 3 years, then must be exchanged for new notes. This prevents counterfeiting and worn-out paper from degrading trust. An exchange fee of 31 per guan means the government profits, but not excessively. Prices remain stable. Trade flourishes. The economy grows faster than ever before. But there is a fundamental difference now. Under the private system, merchant houses had skin in the game. If they overissued, they went bankrupt. Under the government system, the emperor can print without immediate consequence. The temptation to overissue is enormous, and nobody sees the danger yet. Meet Wang Anshi. He is a government reformer in the 1070s. He believes in activist government. He sees paper money as a tool to fund social programs, military campaigns, public works. He understands that the government can print more gaozi to pay for things without raising taxes. This seems brilliant. Free money from paper. But Wang Anshi does not understand that printing money without creating value is taxation by inflation. Nobody does. Not yet. Then there is the skeptic. Sima Guang. He is a conservative official. He watches the money supply growing. He notices prices rising faster than they should. He warns that printing unbacked paper will destroy trust in the currency. He argues for restraint, for limits, for backing notes with real reserves. Nobody listens. The temptation is too great. What none of them know yet is that they are running an experiment that will teach humanity a lesson it will forget and relearn dozens of times over the next 1,000 years. 1041. Emperor Renzong faces a crisis. The Western Xia kingdom threatens the northern border. War is expensive. Soldiers need pay. Horses need feed. Weapons need forging. The treasury is empty. Raising taxes is politically impossible. Borrowing is expensive. So the emperor makes a fateful decision. Print gowazi to pay for everything. The government prints 600 million yuan worth of gowazi in 1 year just for military supplies in Shanxi province. They maintain no copper reserve, no backing, just paper and promises. At first, it seems to work. The war is funded. Soldiers are paid. The crisis is managed. And nothing terrible happens immediately. This teaches the worst possible lesson. That printing money works. Then it accelerates. Normally the government issued gowazi every 3 years and redeemed the old notes at par. 1 old guan for 1 new guan. This created a natural brake on inflation. But in 1068, they abandoned this discipline. They start issuing gowazi continuously. No fixed schedule, no mandatory redemption, no limits. The money supply explodes. In 1105, Emperor Hezong introduces a new note called Kaiyanyan to replace the collapsed jiaozi. But it is the same game with different paper, more printing, higher denominations, less discipline. By 1130, a nominal 1 guan note exchanges for only 400 when in actual copper, that is 60% devaluation. Then it gets worse. By 1161 guan of paper exchanges for only 100 when in copper, and 90% loss of value. Prices are no longer tied to reality. A bag of rice that costs 100 when in copper now costs 1,000 when in paper notes. But not for long, and here is where it gets psychologically interesting. The Song government keeps printing different types of paper money to escape the inflation of the previous type. Jiaozi collapses. Replace it with Kaiyanyan. Kaiyan collapses. Replace it with Hizi collapses. Create regional variations. Create new denominations. Each time the government promises this new money is different. This time it is backed properly. This time we will maintain discipline. This time is different. It never is. Because the underlying problem does not change. The government spends more than it collects. It fills the gap with printed money. Inflation follows. Trust evaporates. The cycle repeats. By 1206, the Southern Song dynasty is printing 8 different types of paper money simultaneously. Different regions use different notes. Exchange rates between them fluctuate wildly. This is monetary chaos. A merchant traveling from one province to another needs to carry multiple types of currency and calculate complex exchange rates. Trade suffers, the economy contracts, and the Mongols are coming. 1260. The Mongols conquer China and establish the Yuan dynasty. Kublai Khan becomes emperor. He is the grandson of Genghis Khan. He rules the largest land empire in human history. And he inherits China's paper money disaster. He sees what the Song dynasty did wrong. He understands the mistakes. He thinks he can do better. In 1260, Kublai issues new paper money called Zhongtong Chao. This time it will be different. Really different. Not copper-backed. Silver-backed. Tuguan of Zhongtong Chao equal 1 tael of silver. Real, valuable silver. The notes are sophisticated. Multiple colors, official seals. Counterfeiting brings execution, and most importantly, they are fully convertible. You can exchange paper for silver anytime at government bureaus. At first, this works spectacularly. Kublai bans all other forms of currency. No copper coins, no old Song notes, only Zhongtong Chao. This creates instant demand. Everyone needs the new money, and because it is backed by silver, people trust it. Prices stabilize. Trade explodes across the Mongol Empire. Korea adopts it. Vietnam adopts it. Thailand adopts it. For 16 years. This is the most successful paper money system in world history. Marco Polo visits China during this period. He is astonished. He writes that the Khan makes people accept paper made from tree bark as if it were pure gold or silver. To Europeans, this is incomprehensible. Money without metal, impossible. But in Yuan China it works, as long as convertibility is maintained. Then comes 1276. Just 16 years after implementing the silver standard, the Mongol Empire is expensive. Wars against Japan, wars against Vietnam, wars against Burma, rebellions in newly conquered territories. Kublai needs money, lots of it, and he has a printing press. The government starts redeeming silver reserves to pay for military campaigns. They print more Zhongtong Chao than they have silver to back. Convertibility becomes nominal, meaning you can theoretically exchange paper for silver, but only if silver is available. Often it is not. The government makes excuses, delays, restrictions. By 1310, convertibility is officially abolished. The Zhongtong Chao becomes pure fiat currency, backed by nothing but government decree. And here is the critical moment. Even after losing silver backing, inflation remains moderate for nearly 50 years. From 1310 to 1350, prices rise slowly. Not hyperinflation, just gradual erosion. Why? Because the government maintains some discipline. They do not print excessively. They do not finance massive deficits. They keep expenditures under control. This teaches another dangerous lesson, that fiat money can work without backing. For a while, then comes the 1350s. Civil War. The Red Turban Rebellion erupts. Provincial revolts spread across China. The Yuan Empire is fracturing, and the government makes the same choice emperors have made for 300 years. Print money to pay for war. The data tells the story. Paper money issuance increases 84 to 103% when multi-provincial rebellions occur. For every additional province in revolt, money supply increases another 42 to 52%. This is systematic monetary financing of war, and it destroys the currency. By 1356, monthly inflation approaches 30,000%, not annual, monthly. Prices double every few days. The rice price index that sat stable for decades suddenly goes vertical. A pound of rice that cost 10 guan in 1350 costs 10,000 guan in 1356. Workers are paid in the morning and spend immediately. By afternoon, the money is worth half. By evening, it is worthless. People stop using paper money entirely. Barter returns. Farmers trade grain for tools. Craftsmen trade goods for food. Markets operate without currency. The yuan government keeps printing. The presses run day and night, but nobody will accept the notes. Historical records state clearly, in all prefectures and counties, commodities are used as exchange medium in all transactions. Accumulated paper monies cannot circulate anymore since people treat them as scrap paper. The trigger is not one event. It is cascade. Trust erodes gradually, then suddenly. For decades, people tolerated slow inflation because they had no choice. Paper money was legal tender. You had to accept it. But when inflation accelerates beyond tolerance, legal tender becomes meaningless. People simply refuse. The government can execute counterfeiters, but they cannot execute everyone who refuses to accept worthless paper. At first, only smart merchants refuse paper. They demand silver or goods, then farmers, then shopkeepers, then everyone. Within months, the entire monetary system collapses. Not because of one dramatic event, but because millions of individual people make the same rational choice. I will not accept this garbage. Meet Zhang Shicheng. He is a rebel leader. He controls several provinces. In 1357, he tries to issue his own paper money to fund his army. Nobody accepts it. Not his own soldiers. Not his own officials. Not the people he rules. Paper money is dead. Trust is gone. It will not return for 600 years. Meet the farmers of Zhejiang province. They spent 30 years saving paper notes, small amounts, earned from selling rice and vegetables. By 1356, their life savings cannot buy a single meal. They watch decades of labor evaporate. They are not speculators, not gamblers, just ordinary people who trusted the government's promise that paper equals value. Meet the government officials who stored their wealth in paper notes, salaries, bonuses, bribes. All in Zhongtong Chao, all worthless. Some commit suicide, some flee to the countryside, some join the rebellion. But some people do fine. The silver hoarders, the people who never trusted paper, they kept their wealth in metal. When the collapse comes, they are rich. They can buy land for nothing, hire laborers for pennies, purchase entire estates for a bag of silver coins. Wealth transfers from paper holders to metal holders overnight. In 1368, the Yuan dynasty falls. The Ming dynasty rises. The new emperor Hongwu is asked about paper money. He refuses. Absolutely not. China will use silver and copper. No paper. The experiment is over. It failed completely. Everyone knows why. You cannot print wealth from nothing. For the next 300 years, China operates on silver and copper. The Ming dynasty tries to reintroduce paper money in 1375. It fails immediately. Nobody trusts it. They remember the yuan collapse. By 1400, paper money is abandoned again. It will not return to China until the 20th century. The Qing dynasty, which rules from 1644 to 1912, never uses paper money except briefly during the Taiping Rebellion from 1851 to 1864. That experiment also fails with massive inflation. The lesson is learned. relearned, and learned again. So what really happened? History books say China's paper money failed because of Mongol mismanagement and war. That is not wrong, but it misses the deeper mechanism. Here is what actually happened. China discovered that fiat money follows a 7-step pattern from innovation to collapse. First, the private solution. Merchants create paper notes backed by metal deposits. This works perfectly because there is no incentive to cheat. If you overissue, you go bankrupt. Second, government takeover. The state nationalizes paper money and promises to maintain standards. Initially they do. Discipline holds, trust builds. This seems to prove government can manage money responsibly. Third, the temptation. Government faces expensive crisis, war, disaster, rebellion. Raising taxes is unpopular. Borrowing is expensive. Printing is easy. They print once to solve one problem. It works. No immediate disaster. Lesson learned. Printing works. Fourth, acceleration. Now, every crisis is solved with printing. The money supply grows faster than the economy. Inflation starts. Gradual at first, 5%, then 10%, annoying but tolerable. Fifth, the transition to pure fiat. The government abandons any pretense of backing. Convertibility ends. The notes become pure legal tender, backed by nothing but trust and law. For a while this still works if printing is restrained. Sixth, the war trap. Major conflict erupts. Government spending explodes. They print huge amounts. Inflation accelerates from gradual to severe. 20%, 50%, 100%, then exponential. Prices double monthly, then weekly, then daily. Seventh, collapse and abandonment. People refuse to accept the currency. Legal tender becomes meaningless when everyone chooses to break the law simultaneously. Barter returns. The government keeps printing. Nobody cares. The currency is dead. A new system must be created from scratch. This exact pattern repeated 3 times in Chinese history. The Song dynasty Zhouazi, the Yuan dynasty Zhongtongchao, the Qing dynasty notes during the Taiping Rebellion. Same steps. Same result, collapse. But here is what nobody talks about. The winners who profited from China's paper money catastrophe. The silver hoarders made fortunes, but the real profiteers were the government officials who controlled the printing. They knew when new money would be issued. They spent it first, before inflation hit. They converted their salaries immediately to real assets. They used inside information to front-run the debasement. A Yuan dynasty official could collect taxes and depreciated paper, exchange it immediately for silver at privileged rates not available to commoners, then buy land from desperate farmers. This was legal, expected. The system transferred wealth from ordinary people who held paper to insiders who controlled the conversion process. Think of it like this. Imagine the government gives you a money printer. You can create cash, but everyone else's cash loses value every time you print. That is monetary expansion. The first person to spend the new money gets full value. Everyone else holds money that is worth less. This is called the Cantillon effect, named for an economist who described it in 1730, but China discovered it in 1050. The system was designed to transfer wealth from the periphery to the center, from savers to printers, from ordinary people to government insiders. This was not an accident. This was not stupidity. This was the inevitable result of giving government a money printer with no hard limits. Now let me show you the pattern. This is the fiat currency destruction formula. It happens every time. First, innovation with backing. Paper money is created as a convenience, fully backed by metal or commodities. This works beautifully. Everyone benefits. Second, government control. The state takes over issuance. Promises to maintain backing. Initially keeps the promise. Builds trust. Third, fiscal pressure. War, disaster, or political pressure creates spending needs. Government abandons full backing. Prints to cover deficits. Fourth, inflation begins. Gradual price increases start. People notice but tolerate it. Government denies money printing as the cause. Blames merchants, hoarders, foreigners. Fifth, acceleration trigger. Major war or crisis forces massive money printing. Inflation becomes severe, double digits, then triple digits. Sixth, hyperinflation. Feedback loop begins. Printing causes inflation. Inflation creates deficits. Deficits require more printing. Exponential growth in money supply and prices. Seventh, abandonment. Currency dies. People refuse it. Barter returns. Government issues new currency or returns to metal. The cycle can repeat. This pattern appeared in every paper money experiment before the 20th century. Song China, Yuan China, Qing China. Revolutionary France, Continental America, Weimar Germany, not one escaped. Now let us talk about 2025. Right now, every major currency on earth is following the Chinese pattern. The US dollar, the euro, the yen, the pound, the yuan itself, all are fiat currencies backed by nothing but trust and law, and all are in the middle of the 7-step collapse pattern. We are somewhere between step 4 and step 5. Inflation is accelerating. Fiscal pressures are enormous. The temptation to print is overwhelming, and central banks are printing. The US national debt is $36.2 trillion as of January 2025. Annual interest costs exceed $892 billion in fiscal 2024. That is 14% of federal revenue just for interest. By 2025, it will exceed $1 trillion. The government spends $1.9 trillion more than it collects every year. They must borrow to cover the gap. And who buys the bonds? The Federal Reserve. By printing new money. The Fed's balance sheet peaked at $8.9 trillion in 2022. They printed $4.5 trillion during COVID in 2 years. That is more than China's entire economy. Now they are cutting, but the balance sheet still sits at $7.2 trillion as of October 2025, 8 times higher than 2008. This is monetary expansion on a scale that would make Kublai Khan blush. The pattern is global. Central banks bought over 1,000 tons of gold in 2022, 2023, and 2024, 3 consecutive years above 1,000 tons. In 2024, they purchased 1,045 tons officially. This is double the 2010 to 2021 average. Why? Because even central banks do not trust fiat currencies anymore. They are quietly preparing for the next phase. Sound familiar? Let us run through the checklist. Innovation with backing, we had it. The Bretton Woods system from 1944 to 1971 was gold-backed dollars. Worked beautifully for 27 years. Government control. Nixon ended gold backing in 1971. Promised it was temporary. Promised dollar would remain stable. We are now 54 years into a temporary suspension. Fiscal pressure. Check. Endless wars, aging populations, massive entitlements. Every government spends more than it earns. Deficits are structural, not cyclical. Inflation begins. Check. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. That is not dollar strength. That is gradual destruction. Acceleration trigger. COVID was the trigger. Governments printed more in 2 years than in the previous decade. US M2 money supply grew from $15.5 trillion in February 2020 to $22 trillion by April 2022, a 42% increase in 26 months. Hyperinflation, not yet. We are in the inflation phase, not hyperinflation. US inflation hit 9.1% in June 2022. It is now around 3% in late 2024 and early 2025. Still above the Fed's 2% target, but not spiraling yet. Abandonment not happening yet, but trust is eroding. Bitcoin exists as an alternative. Gold is hitting record highs. Central banks are buying metal instead of each other's bonds. These are symptoms of declining confidence. Now, is this exactly like Yuan China? No. We have better technology, sophisticated financial markets, independent central banks. These differences matter. They slow the process. Spread the pain over decades instead of years. Make it less obvious. But here is what history teaches. The pattern does not need to be identical to be dangerous. The fundamentals are the same. Government spending exceeds revenue. Central banks print money to fill the gap. Inflation results, trust erodes. The timeline might be different. The mechanism is identical. What should you watch for? First, debt service costs as percentage of revenue. When interest payments exceed 15% of tax revenue, the government is in a trap. They must print or default. The US hit 14% in 2024. Second, central bank gold purchases. When central banks buy gold instead of bonds, they are hedging against their own currencies. The 2024 gold buying spree is a flashing warning sign. Third, velocity of inflation. Not the rate, the change in the rate. If inflation goes from 3% to 5% to 8% to 12% to 12% over short periods, the acceleration is starting. Watch the trajectory, not the level. Fourth, alternative currency adoption. If people start preferring Bitcoin, gold, or foreign currency for savings, trust is breaking. This is the early phase of abandonment. I am not predicting hyperinflation tomorrow. I am not saying the dollar will collapse next year. I am showing you the pattern. The pattern China discovered 700 years ago. The pattern that has repeated dozens of times. The pattern that is playing out again right now. So why do we keep falling for this? Because fiat money is not a technology problem, it is a political problem wrapped in human psychology. We are wired to trust authority. We want to believe the government knows what it is doing. We assume modern central banks are different from medieval Chinese emperors, smarter, more sophisticated, better educated. But the incentives are identical. Government wants to spend. Printing is easier than taxing. Inflation is taxation by stealth. It steals from savers and gives to borrowers. It reduces debt burdens and finances deficits. Politicians love it because the costs are hidden and delayed. The Chinese emperors faced the same choice. Raise taxes and face rebellion. Cut spending and face unrest. Or print money and delay the crisis. They chose printing every single time. Modern governments are no different. The Fed printed during 2008, during COVID, during every crisis, and will print during the next one. But here is what this story really teaches us. The disaster is not the final collapse. The disaster is the 300 years of boom and bust, of trust built and destroyed, of wealth stolen through inflation, of ordinary people ruined while insiders prosper. The Song Dynasty baker who saved Joazzi notes for 30 years and lost everything in 1105 was not evil or stupid. He was trusting. The Yuan dynasty farmer who accepted Zhongtong Chao for rice in 1350 and could not buy rice with it in 1356 was not reckless. He was following the law. Every generation thinks they have evolved past the mistakes of their ancestors. Every generation has better models, better institutions, better intentions. Every generation learns the same lesson the hard way. You cannot print wealth from nothing. You can only transfer it from those who do not understand to those who do. The question is not whether the current fiat system will fail. History says it will. The question is whether you will recognize the pattern while there is still time to protect yourself. Understanding this does not give you a crystal ball. The Chinese dynasties inflated for centuries before total collapse. Modern fiat currencies have lasted 54 years so far. They might last another 50, or 5, or 500. Timing is impossible, but pattern recognition is priceless. When you see government debt growing faster than the economy, you know the pressure to print is building. When you see central banks buying gold, you know confidence is cracking. When you see inflation accelerating, you know the end game is closer. You cannot control central banks. You cannot control government spending. You cannot control when the collapse comes. But you can control your own wealth preservation. You can hold assets governments cannot print: land, businesses, commodities, precious metals, skills, things with intrinsic value. The Chinese who survived the paper money collapses with their wealth intact were not the ones who trusted paper. They were the ones who held silver, gold, land. They understood that paper is a claim on value, not value itself. That government promises are only as good as government discipline, and that discipline always fails eventually. That lesson is 700 years old. It is timeless. Now I want to hear from you. Do you see the Chinese pattern repeating today? Are we in step 4, 5, or 6? What am I missing? What do you think happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The best analysis often comes from you, not me. If this changed how you see money and currency, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more economic history that actually matters. Next time, we are diving into John Law and the Mississippi Bubble. When France tried the Chinese experiment 400 years later and destroyed their currency in 18 months, another pattern hiding in plain sight, another lesson they do not teach in school. Remember, history does not repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, the rhyme sounds a lot like Song Dynasty China in 1100, or Yuan Dynasty China in 1350, or Revolutionary France in 1790, or Weimar Germany in 1923. The pattern is everywhere once you see it. See you in the next one.